it's not always important to be the best. It's more important to be the best known. The single most powerful principle in marketing, period, bar none, end of story, no exceptions. And it kills me that more people don't recognize this, because it has not even that much to do with marketing. It's just the way the human mind is wired, how it works, and everything when it comes to relationships and life. And it's the familiarity principle. It's the mere exposure effect. It's overwhelming to people when they really start to dig in, and there's books on it like this, The Like Switch. The Like Switch is written by a former training director at the FBI, an FBI agent's guide to influencing, attracting, and winning people over, talking about how when an agent has to recruit an asset, I got to get somebody to spy on their boss or whatever. How do I win somebody over? And they will put an agent in somebody's life, in their neighborhood, for sometimes months. And they're not supposed to talk to them, connect with them. I don't even want the people to consciously notice me. I just want them to see me. I happen to be in the grocery store shopping when they're shopping. They're out walking their dog. I ride by on my bicycle. Because the more familiar something is to us, the more we like it. One of my favorite recent books, and I am a book addict, Hitmakers, The Science of Popularity in an Age of Distraction. What makes things popular? And it goes through how do things become huge, and it completely dispels the myth of viral. It's not really viral. There's always one massive exposure event that makes it take off, but it really looks at what makes hit music. And without exception, the number one biggest, most important factor, period, bar none, is familiarity. The more you hear a song, even if it's a song you wouldn't normally like, the music, if you hear something, not so much that it becomes irritating, but if you hear it enough, it makes us like it. So that Spotify has built this into their algorithms, and their algorithms are famous in nerd worlds. Spotify will take and mix new music in strategically in between songs you like, so that you hear it over and over and over, but while you're in a good mood, while you have the association, and they're mixing in, and they can literally create hits by pushing a lot of exposure to things in the right context. And this just goes on and on and on. In the real estate world, probably heard me say this one before. They knock on all the doors in a neighborhood. Hey, who's the number one agent in this area? And answers are all over the map. No clear winner by a big margin. Then they do an old-fashioned Gary Keller 8x8, 8 postcards over 8 weeks with an imaginary realtor. Stock photo, made-up name, Tom Goodwin, whatever. And they hit people with these consistent postcards, and they go back, knock on the door, same question. Hey, who's the number one? And more than half the people picked the imaginary realtor. And the conclusion of the study was, it's not always important to be the best. It's more important to be the best known. Look, being both is clearly important, but nobody seems to really understand. By the way, when you go back to the like switch, this is how to make people fall in love with you. This is how to make anybody like you. It is a scientific guide to connecting with people, attracting and winning people over. But all of these, and the books and the studies and the research go on and on and on. And even to the point that, look, I go and I do Google searches, and where are we? Look, familiarity and personal marketing, the research, these are not ads, these are research studies, clinical trials, stuff like that, all on the concept of how we can use mere exposure. It's just having somebody see us over and over and over, how insanely powerful that is at making them like us. It is the single most important factor in branding. 82% of people say they would not reply to somebody that was not familiar to them, would not reply to a brand they were not familiar with. It's the most important thing. That's why when people are like, yeah, I've been doing this stuff and I don't get leads. If you want to do leads, do lead shit. But if you want to get business, if you want to build your brand, if you want to be the best known, there is nothing that pays better in the long run than being the best known, whatever person in your market. You got to be there consistently. You got to be seen and you got to be remembered and they got to like you. So really, I wouldn't call this one a lesson today as much as I'm saying it's a calling, a call to action to look, you need to look up the mere exposure effect. You need to look up the familiarity principle. You need to convince yourself that nothing makes you more trustworthy than consistent exposure to people. You've got to stay in front of them in order to be trusted. And there's so many things you can do when it comes to being familiar. And some of the hacks that I'll give you right now. So all this has just been trying to convince you that the rule of 7, which has been around for as long as I've been around, which is people got to see you 7 times or see something 7 times before they would ever feel safe, is today the rule of 22, 26, 16, lots of opinions and studies, whatever, and situations. But the bottom line, we don't trust anything we don't see over and over and over. Your goal is to be trusted by people. And the things that I try to teach when it comes to this social media marketing stuff is how can I accelerate that? And the very first one is familiarity by association. It's really simple. I'm here in Vegas at the mastermind event, and I was just downstairs and friends were introducing me to other friends. Renee Rodriguez introduces me to somebody, or Kai McBride does, or Shayla Gifford. And just because it's their friend, I automatically trust that person. That's why I lean on doing content for, with, or about others. If I'm doing a video with somebody and or about them, saying, whatever, financial planner, CPA, mini blind owner, whenever I'm doing those videos with somebody, and I do that little trick where I share it onto their profile so that all their friends will see it, everybody who already knows, likes, and trusts them will automatically assume I'm safe. I don't trust a stranger, but if a friend brings somebody else in, by association, that familiarity gets transposed. All of those familiarity points that somebody else has, I pick up a good percentage of them by simply being seen with them, because there's familiarity in them. And you have to understand that marketers, us evil, manipulative marketers, use that in a lot more ways than just familiarity by having somebody else in there. Anything that's familiar automatically breeds trust, whether we realize it or not. So anytime you can bring familiarity into your post, what are they going to see that already looks and feels familiar? When I'm building websites, I try to do 2 things. The one thing I always tell the developers, I want it to look like websites that they see all the time, like other people's websites. I always want to use logos that are familiar. All this as seen on. And by the way, bonus side tip for you, if you want to do this as seen on, there's a lot of services that are like brand featured. So for a couple $100, I write a press release. It gets pushed out to all these, and then I get all the logos because it's on their websites, not necessarily on TV, and I can have links to it. So those are clickable links. But the familiarity of having these things works. If I can make my website look like something else, somebody else's website, I can't tell you how many times I've told developers, make it look like Apple. You can't, I don't want to plagiarize, but I want it to feel familiar, because I don't consciously go, oh, this looks like Apple, or this looks like whatever. It's just, nope, this feels safe. When we start getting into all that super catchy, glitzy, nope. I want it to look familiar. And that's why I'm always trying to use anything I know is familiar. Huge way to shortcut the familiarity. Always try to bring other things in that are familiar. I want names that sound familiar. I want pictures that are familiar. I want to tap into other people's familiarity. The more comfortable stuff I have in my content, the more comfortable people will be with me. So familiarity by similarity, and that's making things look like, sound like, feel like other things. Familiarity by exposure or consistency, and that's where I get down to I'm not going to stop and notice and really remember your face and everything and know, but in branding, color is said to be about 60% of brand recognition. And a lot of these are Varga. I just love them as a photography branding group. But notice how all the logos are simple font treatments, not too fancy, maybe a monogram to go with a font treatment, your name. You are your brand, no matter what. Forget the companies. No. You are your brand, but the color. Every one of these clear, prominent color, it's going to show up on everything, the same fonts on everything. The more familiar it is, the better it's going to work. But you need to own a color that is consistently throughout all of your branding, or a color scheme. Now, when I see you, I'm trying to grab hooks, because it's that consistency of becoming familiar. Well, I got to notice you for you to become familiar. The same photos, the same logo, the same stuff over and over and over, with content that makes me feel good. And now I'm back to familiarity by association, but it's that consistent exposure. If somebody had billboards everywhere in town and was on all the shopping carts and mailed postcards to everybody, it would cost 50, 100 grand a month. But hands down, they would be the top, whatever, lawyer, realtor, mortgage professional, accountant. They would be a rock star, an influencer in everybody's mind. Well, you can't do that. It's too expensive. But on social, you can, but you got to post consistently, consistent exposure. It is fascinating. It's worth following up on. It's worth studying. I don't know how to teach it more than this, is what's hard for me. And that's why it was tough when they gave me this topic. It's like, yeah, this is my sermon. This is my main thing. This is what I do. But man, it is hard to teach or make people understand that simply being seen enough, you have to go Google it. It's the only way. If you go Google it and you start looking at all the results and noticing that, oh my gosh, everything, when consumers are discovering a new product, it's essential to build trust, blah, blah, blah. We break down factor science behind some of the top brands do it, and you come down here and it's all about the most important thing. The most important thing is consistency. It's exposure. We like that which is familiar to us, period. Read just the opening paragraphs of a few different articles and studies. It's insane how powerful it is. That's why we build the fan bases and then try to stay in front of them consistently. If I could afford to stay in front of them 6-8 times a month, I would. Someday I'll have enough empirical data to know if it's better off than just staying in front of them 3 or 4 times, because it costs me twice as much for that extra. But that's just how we're wired. I see, and then I trust because I haven't been harmed or threatened. It's the amygdala. Anything new is strange and dangerous until it proves otherwise.